All right. Ob says we're rolling, or OBS. I don't know whether you pronounce it OBS or OBS. I don't. YouTube doesn't say anybody's waiting, but we'll pretend that there are people on at least. Welcome to the weekly live stream. Tonight we will be working through some performance things. Last weekend I spent a lot of time dealing with network performance. I spent Saturday implementing a lag simulator. And then of course I found tons of problems that if you have high lag will make the game uncomfortable. And so I've been running with that. Well, before we get started, I'll go ahead and thank my patrons. Thanks to those who still joined. And I actually updated it this time. Last time I updated it, but then for some reason saved the old version and it was showing the old version. So there's one person who managed to be on and drop again. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. As you can see, all of the things I have open. Alrighty. So to the game, I added this simulated lag so that even when I'm playing in single player, I can simulate the round trip lag. And even though it's set for 400 milliseconds, it seems to average about 300. I get about 660 or so millisecond if I make a request, and the response I get, it's about 660, somewhere between 600 and 700. So there's some weirdness going on there. The lag simulator works, and so I haven't really done anything with it. I did think I would talk about it for a second, because when you have a lag simulator, I was trying to think how to describe this. So let's say the server sends a message, message, and then the client, if we imagine that, this axis up here is time, right? The server sends a message and the client will get it later. So let's say we had M1, M2, M3, M4. And so you'd think, well, on the client, maybe I can just add a sleep every time, right? And then the message comes in later and I sleep for 500 milliseconds or whatever, and that'll make things seem slow. The problem is that will make sure the first message will be 500 milliseconds, then you'll get M1, but then you get another 500 milliseconds in M2 and another 500 milliseconds in M3. So the simple and dumb ways are, of course, the naive approach does not work. What you really need is that 500 millisecond delay, and then everybody else pumps through. And even worse, the server may be sending messages down multiple channels, and the client may be receiving them down multiple channels. So there's not just one thread, but there's many threads. And if you try to do it all on one thread, they all tend to serialize. And instead of getting, so let's say the server is sending on multiple channels, and so you'll get, maybe I'll just call them C1, or MA, MB, MC. So maybe these are messages coming in on a different channel. And if you try to do the delay with just one thread, then these end up, maybe you get M2, M3, and then MC, MD. And if some of these are coming in really fast, they will swamp all of the other ones. And so if they're coming in on multiple threads, then you need to delay them on multiple threads. And that was what finally got me to where I needed to be. I'll leave that open for a second. So what I implemented was, where did I put it? Implemented this class called lag simulator. And so basically it keeps track of a delayed dispatcher where it collects the messages, adds them to a queue, and then if enough time has passed, it will let that go to the application. And then for each one that comes in, we get a dispatcher for the current thread, and if we don't have one, we create one. Normally that might be a bad idea, but I know my games only create a specific number of threads. They don't spawn new threads. So it is limited. And so for each new message that comes in, it creates a new delayed dispatcher. And some of you might say, well, why didn't you just use a standard, lag simulator like that works external to the program? And the reason is because I'm on Windows, and those tend to be a little weird. I've not found a good one. If somebody knows of a good one, I'd like to see it. The other reason is because I wanted this to work in single player, which is using the localhost loopback. And it's been probably 10 years since I looked at network lag simulators, external ones. But they always had a problem with apps that used the local loopback, because that's it's higher up in the network layers and they don't get a chance to hook in. So this was a way I could control it. I could see it. I could also make it work for, well, I suppose with a external simulator, I could have separated out UDP and TCP. But this way I was able to apply it to just TCP and stuff like that. So that's the lag simulator, and it tends to work. To hook it into the game, I had to get a little weird. JMonkey Engine's networking doesn't easily allow that to be hooked in, but I was able to just extend the default server, and wherever dispatch is called, I run it through the lag simulator instead. And similar on the client. And so both on the client and the server now we have this lag simulator that we set to whatever. Oh, well, there's why it's 600 and not 800. Because the server is hard-coded to 200 and doesn't look at its setting. If we look at, where is it? Game client. Yeah, see, game client actually looks up its, game client actually looks up its lag value and uses it. And so if there's lag set, it uses that, which is 400. And then on the server, it looks up the lag, but then it doesn't actually use it. And I'm not going to turn that on right now because 600 is plenty fine for testing, and this is what I'm used to at the moment. So I will leave a note. Oh, thanks, Ron. Leave a note, fix me. Actually use the lag setting. Yeah, I mean, I tested by turning it off and on, and of course that worked, because if there's no setting, it would still run the other. So that's the lag. The other thing I noticed, and anybody who's using SimEthereal ought to find this interesting, somewhere along the line of porting SimEthereal from my original prototype over to, where'd it go? From my original prototype over to the official open source version, that there's somebody's game who's had like thousands of players logged in using it and so on and so forth, and I did not set the messages to unreliable, so all of the messages were actually going out over TCP. And if none of you know, let's see, SimEthereal. Like, the whole point of SimEthereal was to implement a high-performance object syncing in UDP. So even this picture says, UDP, which are unreliable. They go really quick. But then when I was looking at which messages were going TCP and which messages were going to UDP, because there were some I thought should be UDP that weren't, it turned out all of SimEthereal's messages were going UDP. And so it was that fast, even using TCP. When I switched it to UDP, man, it feels great. Hopefully you guys will feel the same thing. But it's snowing in Oklahoma. Oh, nice. Yeah, definitely not snowing here. We were hoping no snow until January, maybe. Here in Northern Virginia. Sometimes it has snowed as early as Thanksgiving. But so adding this line made a big difference for the feel. And so, you hit it, it feels pretty instant. Excuse me. Obviously, it'll depend on your lag, but I noticed it locally. Even without the lag simulator, I noticed a difference. So let me talk about the testing setup I have. The other thing I did was in various places where I knew if you did something from the wrong thread that it was probably going to be slow. So once I started simulating lag, I found lots of cases where the game was getting frame drops. And those are super bad. You don't want to have frame drops because then nothing moves. Player can't move for half a second or whatever it takes. And so I had to track down all of the places where I was doing client to server round trip style queries on the render thread, because those would just flat hang the game. And local environment was one of those cases where I retrieve things on behalf of the player to figure out how many trees are around them and stuff like that. But what I did was deep down in the world code, I added, we got world client service. I added these thread checks, and these are not the best way to do this. I happen to know. I'm gonna rip all this out, but so the thread check checks to see if the current thread is the JME main thread, then it will do some specific thing. In this case, there are some cases where we do get called from the main thread, and it's okay because we expect that data to be cached. So if it's greater than, what is this, a millisecond? If it takes longer than a millisecond, then I log with the full stack trace that we called that from the client, from the main thread. And similarly for entity data, I went and hacked Zayas to do a similar thing. If it detects that I'm calling from JME3 main, it'll complain. There's a place where I retrieve block shapes for the models and things. So one more thing, and then because once I added the lag simulator, it took forever to load the world in, and the logs were just constantly streaming. When I run locally, I run with a low radius, and I usually turn the grid on so that I know when I'm crossing grid boundaries and can anticipate the lag that might cause if I'm doing client-server queries. So this is a really long 16-minute explanation on what I did to get where we are here as far as finding the problems and tracking many of them down. And I still have not fixed all of them. There's some I haven't enabled again. Usually before the live stream I run Gradle once to get all the daemons started, but right now my system is daemon free. So it's going to take it a second to run this first time. Just down a little further. Sorry about that. So we'll wait a second. Holy moly. All right. So now obviously there's some of this that you guys won't get to feel. Oh, the other thing is I went and turned off all of the ambient sounds, not the loops, but the stuff that spawns, because it just creates extra logging, and I was trying to see the logs. So you can already see we made a query from the JME thread where we asked for, so the system hung for a second while we asked for all of the players. I think that's where this came from. Set player. We called back set player, and we waited for the result instead of. So that's probably one I have to look into, why we're not doing that asynchronously. That's the key, right? Lots of asynchronous messaging whenever possible. Don't send a message to the server and then wait for it, blocking the render thread. It's okay to send a message to the server, just make sure you don't wait for it. We can see already there's a bunch of logs coming. Good. I will actually turn the sound off before we just mute. I'll go ahead and mute that next time I'm in the settings. So you can see the grid lines, and we saw some earlier on. We saw some stack traces coming through. Like there's one Yeah, so that's the map is asking for some data. We're loading all the world stuff, but you can see up here the threads have all finished. That's why I keep the clip really short, so it doesn't have a whole lot of the world to load in. And actually, it's kind of reminiscent of old Mythruna, where the really deep fog. Something I'll have to fix is factoring fog into the shadows. But before, when you'd click to place a block, it would take several, it would feel like it took a second, right? Tick, 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 like that. And so the first time it will, because there's a syncing that happens the first time whenever you place or remove a block. That first time to look up the action strings and things. But once you get that one down, you can place them as fast as you can click, basically. And eventually I have to limit that, because players should not be able to click that fast. Like there should be some animation and so on. But still, we're proving that it works. Similarly, so here's a place where we'll really see lag. And I'm gonna move the screen up so you guys can see the queries come through here. If you open the inventory, that's another thing I did. I added a test on the server to see if we haven't received player input in a while, we stop moving the player. That was to counteract the fact that sometimes when moving across boundaries like this, queries would happen like that, and you'd go, you'd lose a few frames and it'd go shooting you off into space. And now, like the first time it happens, but then after that it shouldn't. And so we can move back and forth over here. But before, there was a lot of lag moving between these grid cells. And when you did that, a second of lag would let the physics engine continue to carry you on in that direction. And now it stops you after like a quarter of a second or 2/5 of a second or so. But what I was going to do is I'm going to bring up the inventory, and you can see when it's pulling in all those the object models, like it takes forever to come up, and you can see each one of these loading in, and all the stack trace, so it's indicating that we're doing the wrong kind of query. So we can find the stack trace, find the container. Yeah, is retrieving a very specific component, probably the object name, or something similar to that. But the model view state, the thing that loads the, when I have this chair over here, the thing that loads that chair in is also similarly done on the render thread. That's maybe what we'll fix today if we have time. I want to think. So how I did this bit was exactly how I described last week. It just took me a lot longer than I meant to. Essentially, we keep there's all the cache data that we're seeing right now that's local, and so when we make an edit to that. We send out the events, and the world view can update its geometry, and then the server gets the save message, and we get an edit from the server confirming that that was fine, so we don't have to revert it. But you can see how like the lighting lags for a second, and that's because the lighting comes from the server. And there's still a bug here. It's if the lighting gets updated on its own with no block updates, for some reason it's not updating. As you can see, there's like a shadow there from when there was a block and we removed it and put it back. There's a lighting glitch that I have a key I can hit to force the server to recalculate the lighting, and I do that. You can see it says, reset lighting in 127 milliseconds. But for some reason the events don't make it back, and so that's a problem. But anyway, what I was saying before, if you see, as I put these down, you can see the shadowing come in a little bit later, and so you can see then for half a second later, whatever lag time is, about half of that, you'll see the shadows disappear because the lighting information came through. But the big things to deal with right now, and the thing where we get the most lag crossing boundaries, are when it's loading in those objects, like the tree and the chair, and when we're trying to open the inventory, and it'll do it again. Okay, no, actually it's got that cached now. Oh. So we call a lot from the render thread. I did fix some things. Oops. Yeah, so the other thing is right-clicking. Takes a long time. There may not be anything I can do about that. But if we... Yeah, so we got really far behind on the logging because I had it paused. Yeah, I've got local lighting turned off because that was a client-server query, which is why she looks so bright. So if we, if I go to drag this chair around... Oh, wow. Okay, well, I had to pull all the action names. That's something I've got to deal with. Why isn't it letting me drag that? Oh, because it's a physical object. That's right. I'm not allowed to drag those. I can drag when I place one, and you can see here model view state. Model view state made a query. If I move up a little bit, you can see long style query cache miss on render thread. So we tried to retrieve a model on the render thread and it was not in cache. That's bad. We should not be doing that. We should be doing it on the background. So, but I can drag the object around. You can see from the mouse that it drags at a delay, but it does drag it. That's the lag, right? I move over here, and 600 milliseconds later, my actions show up. And there's really nothing I can do about that in this case, but it's workable, right? We can see what's going on. And 600 milliseconds lag is probably high for what would be normally a playable game like this. So I think that's reasonable. So that's where we are. The client server stuff, yeah, I went over that. And yep, so that's where we are. So let's look at what it might take to load those in on a background thread instead of the render thread. We will exit. Yeah, actually that went a lot faster than I expected. Maybe there was something I forgot to talk about. While I'm here, let's mute the sound. Then later I can freak out, like wonder why sound's not working. So, model view state, I have kind of the other thing is like checking the lighting, which I may be able to put back now. Set lighting. Let me diff and see. Okay, that's all good. Okay. So yeah, I've put it back the way it was. Yeah. And so I have started a little bit of this already. But bottom line is there's this how deep to go down this rabbit hole. Anybody who's ever messed with SIO2, which is sort of one of the SimSilica libraries that ties all of the other SimSilica libraries together in some useful game utility code. One of the most used classes from there for me is this EntityContainer. And that allows you to keep track of a set of entities that meet some criteria. In this case, that any of the entities that have a spawn position and a shape will create these model impl. So whenever an object is added to this entity set, basically an EntityContainer wraps an entity set and manages the objects in that set for you. So whenever we get a new entity that has a spawn position and shape info, we create one of these model impls and we manage it. And so we can set things about it. Whenever one of the components about that entity is updated, we can then update them. We could be smarter about when we set it and when we don't. That's up to us. And then when it's removed again, we can release the model, remove it from the world. So these entity containers are good ways of managing like peered objects, like controller objects or system objects. I'm making little air quotes. You guys can't see that. So we create one of these model impls. And now what we want to do is whenever the shape is set right here, we call this shape factory create shape. And we would really prefer that to be done on the background thread. on a worker thread. And I'm trying to think of the best way to do that. I believe if we make the model impl itself a job. Job is another SIO2 class. Any developer on this that's not using SIO2 with JMonkey engine, it's easier to read than to say. Probably should be. There's a lot of useful stuff there. It ties, some stuff together. It gives you access to game systems and things. But there's a job state that creates a worker pool, and then you have these jobs that you can run. And on the background thread, it'll call the run on worker method, and then when it's done, it queues it up, and on the render thread, it'll call run on update. And you can return the amount of work done, and so the job state or the worker pool can make sure that it doesn't run too many of these on the update thread. Basically, so like when we load the world, there's hundreds of those 32 by 32 by 32 areas of the world, and they run on background threads 4 at a time because there's 4 threads, and then when they come back, we have to add them to the scene. Well, adding lots of objects to the scene even in one update can cause lag, and so we really only want to add 1, maybe 2, and the worker pool controls that. So as the jobs come in, once per frame, we figure out how many of them we can update based on what they return. If they return 0, we know they were instantaneous. If they return 1, we know that that's like a one worker unit, and maybe we're only allowed to run 2 worker units per update. Just a way of kind of gating what goes back into the scene graph, and to make sure that a single update doesn't take too long. Anyway, we need to implement this run on worker and run on update. Normally I might make a separate job object, but because this is already an internally managed thing, we'll go ahead and we'll just plop those here. So whenever the shape changes, now if turns out we need to put the lighting query on a separate thread as well, then it makes sense maybe to create different jobs. But for now, we will try just moving some of that work. Oops. And the other thing I know from experience, and we'll look at world view state. World view state keeps it a reference to its workers. Because it makes it easy for me to switch which sets of workers. In Mythruna, there are 3 sets of workers. There's the regular workers that are like the regular priority. Then there's the background workers where there's fewer of them and they're at lower priority. That's what the far terrain and that kind of stuff uses, because it's not as critical as the stuff that's close to the player. And then there's the priority workers, which is when an event comes in, we need to re-render it, we need it now. And so we give those a couple threads too. But in this case, we just want regular workers. And so on initialize, where is initialize? Past it. We'll grab that. True. So it errors out if it's not there. Now we can execute it. Okay, so back down here in our model impl, where we got the run on worker, that's what we're on the background. So instead of all this stuff, you know what we never did? We also never set the shape info. Oh yeah, we did right here. Shape info, yeah. Okay. So yeah, we can remove it from the parent now. But actually, what we will do is workers execute ourselves. We will move all of this into these other methods. And what we want is oh, interesting. Okay, so we do have Um, hmm. I thought that this one already had a root node, but apparently not. And that does make it a little trickier. So when we run on the worker, we just want to load the new model, and we'll load up background spatial. And in an overabundance of caution, since we'll be accessing that from multiple threads and will not be synchronizing, I'll make it volatile just to make sure. There's a, in memory models, different threads can actually see different versions of the memory. Volatile forces them to see the same versions of the memory. Normally, if you have synchronized or other memory bearers around that, it forces the threads to copy the same memory. It's weird, trust me. So that's fine. We want to load that in the background. Then on the update, if we had an old spatial, we remove it. And then this spatial equals background spatial. And then we can attach that. Yep. So that should be it to get this to run on a background thread. I mean, it's never that simple, right? There's always something I've forgotten when I'm on a live stream. But maybe we'll get lucky. Oh. Ah, yes. We'll return 1. We actually did add a new object to the... Yeah. Oh, okay, so here's the problem, right? No, I do. Shoot. I thought maybe I wasn't adding it and removing from the scene, but no, I do. I'm sorry. That's one of the things I thought when I said, oh, there's a problem before, that's what I was thinking of, but no, we actually do attach and detach right there. At first I was thinking every model impl had its own node and we could just, hey, mute's not working. Hold on, let me fix that. Maybe I sidetrack. Oh, I left it wasn't actually being used. Okay, so back to obvious state. So third time trying to start the app without actually real problems. We can test what's going on. Continue. There we go. Nice and quiet. Yeah, see that not responding? That's something I'm going to fix. I think we've got to do more on background threads, initializing the world and loading the player list and things we need to do on background threads with little progress bars and stuff. So yeah, we can see, who is, uh-oh. Oh, yeah. So the issue is that some parts of this code expect the spatial to already be there, and we've now delayed its creation. So up here we've got a real stack trace, null pointer exception. That's on 763. So yeah. So what we need to do, we'll hunt down each of these cases, but that also means that when we attach it, when we run on update, to make sure to update the relative position. This is probably not the only case like this we'll run into, but rather than try to hunt them down, we'll just find them one at a time. Doesn't take forever. And we're guaranteed to find them this way. Here we go. See, we're going to get new exceptions. Yeah, all those other stack traces make the, yeah, so we do. Another case where we're missing something. Where's the first error? They should get parent. And this is in Model State 981. But we need even better than that. Why didn't we fail up here? Oh, model. Sure, we can do that. So if model, I'm not giving too much thought to this right now. But that means probably, where are we? We're in update for, oh, for mobs. So probably we want to, okay, update relative position also updates the label location, so. The delay is really long. I see your message now. So I see your messages right away. You guys don't see my responses until a few seconds later. Like if I was to pull up the live stream, like you'll see a delay in how long it takes. Yeah. Maybe that I don't know. It shows for me. Maybe it gives you a clue how long that takes. It's like 30 seconds or something, maybe less. Oh yeah, no, this is the first message I've seen, James. Okay, so we got those two. Let's try it again. Let's see where we're going to fail this time. Yeah, in fact, you know, maybe OBS didn't show it. Oh yeah, so no, I just see these. Yeah, what volatile does, its really only job is to force that particular variable to be current on all threads that can see it. Otherwise, even though the field is visible to two different threads, there's a chance that they've each got their own copy of memory and they have different versions of that. So one thread might modify it and the other thread might not see that value until later. But volatile, they should all see the same thing, unless you use the word, you know, the keyword synchronized. I don't think Java's added any other way to force a memory barrier. But synchronized forces a memory barrier, which forces all the threads to sync up on their views of whatever is the data. Otherwise, you know, if you had field foo set to 2 from one thread and another thread was looking at it, it might still see the old value, and it could be a while before it sees that 2, just depending on the vagaries of memory models and threads and cores and things. But each core might get its own copy of the memory in its cache and stuff. The object reference is current, but it still isn't thread safe. Yeah, but I only need the object reference. I get what you're saying, but there's a long enough delay between when the thread there's a long enough delay between when I send the thread and many memory bearers in between. There's a long enough delay between when this thread is done setting that field and the worker gets executed on the update thread. You know, it goes through a queue and it gets run again by a different thread. There's enough delay and there's enough stuff going on that the volatile itself probably isn't even necessary. I just put it there as an overabundance of caution. I think what you're trying to say is the object itself could be not fully formed yet. But that's unlikely in this case. Okay, so there's another error. Where is it? Okay. Model view state, but 968. Yeah, I get it. In fact, it's neat to have somebody else who's familiar enough with this to talk to about it. So if parent and who's having problems here? Both parent spatial and okay, so what we will do, since this is done on update, which is based on time, we will, if our model, see, this is in mob. Yeah, okay, so wait. Yeah, we can't attach it if there is no spatial. Model.spatial is not equal to null, then we can attach it. Really, we should have encapsulated that into set parent, really. Fix me. Do spatial attachment and set model set parent. And then else, if the parent is not equal to null, so this is the part we only want to do if there's actually a child model. Though, see, if we had done this in set parent, anyway. How can I get past this? What we want to make sure so fix me, make parent-child attachment less squishy with multi-threading. So there's going to be a better way to do this, but for now, we'll only do this if both of them are not null. Otherwise, what's going to happen is we'll come through again, we'll see we're in a new place, and we can check parent-child, last parent, parent ID. So as soon as we set the last parent and stuff, then it becomes real. All right. Otherwise, if model spatial is not equal to null, we set its stuff. Okay. So let's try again. Find one of these at a time. Okay. So it has to go in here. That's weird. Okay, wait. Let me put it back to the way it was for a second. Yeah, my editor remembers all this stuff. Okay, that's the way it was. Parent's not equal to null. If model.spatial is not equal to null, then we'll do this. And if parent is not equal to null, if parent.spatial is not equal to null, then we'll do this. But we don't want to set the parent either. And this was happening even if there was no parent. We would still set the parent ID. I feel like That may come back to bite me. But I don't know. Well, we could do this. Oops. Excuse me. So what we're saying is if there is no parent, if there is a parent and that parent has a spatial, then we'll set last parent to parent ID. Otherwise, we wanted to come back and try again later. But if there was no parent at all, we'll still set last parent to parent ID. Because maybe we try again in the future. I actually think that's wrong. We should probably be logging that. Okay, so that may be a separate bug that I'm not going to worry about right now. Let's see, will we get through all of the issues of not doing a proper design of this particular feature? The model view state is one of the earlier states I created, and as such it's gotten just stuff glommed into it. When I needed to add dynamic mobs, I kind of quickly hacked that in. When I needed names above the players, I quickly hacked that in. When I needed parent-child relationships for backpacks and attachments and things, I quickly hacked that in. And it probably needs a once-over for a redesign, refactoring, with all of that in mind. Large objects, everything. Okay, we're getting farther. We're getting farther. Model not found. Yeah, we should be seeing that until the models actually get loaded. But now it's not loading any models at all. Well, that's not good. Yeah, our tree and our chair, all that stuff's gone. It's not loading them in. And of course we're getting tons of errors about that down below. But there they go. Oh, I know why. Because we were loading in all that terrain, it was just taking a long time. So look, it loaded the models in. Let's see if Fade has her backpack on. She does. Backpack's an attachment, so it's got that parent-child relationship I was just dealing with. That was the backpack. Things like that. Or when she's got a thing in her hand. That's also the the build wand in her hand there. Okay, labels are working. Okay, and so that means this is still borked because that's using a different set of code, which I'll deal with later. Container is another one that needs kind of a refactoring. I should probably load in the actions as part of entity containers. Anyway, so equip. Does she still equip her stuff? Let's see. Oops. Yep. The other way I look is like I look down and look through her body. I can see if she's holding the etching tool. So if we place let's place a. Yeah, that's the other thing is even turn the middle mouse takes a little while to get the. That's annoying. Yeah, so if you have like lots of lag, you're going to have problems anyway. So let's place a desk. Okay, so new object placed okay. I can drag it around with lots of lag. And yeah, I think it's neat that lag, this is one of the areas where you guys can see the lag because you can see where my cursor bubble is moving and the desk did not move. Now it moves. That's the lag. 1001. 1001. Okay, so all that stuff's working. Should be able to right click on this. It takes it a second to bring up the menu. Again, another thing that we should cache. There we go. So I could make it solid. And then Fade should be able to jump up on top of there. Oh, also, jumping up on blocks, now that SimEthereal has been fixed and there's, this is more twitchy, jumping up on blocks is way easier. So part of that was not just the physics or the impulses that I'm using, but like you could jump right up there. But part of it was the fact that SimEthereal had like a built-in TCP lag. So that's nicer. All right, so I did finish that one. I will place another desk and we'll see. We're going to look down, like if we look down here for weird stack traces to appear, if I place a desk, we should not see weird stack traces appear. So we did not. That means that everything was being called from the appropriate thread. I think, oh yeah, look, and she's, I think, even the right color now. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Let me delete that object so we don't have too many of these hanging around. I have some places that I've built to test her lighting, which will be fun. So up here near these flame blocks, yeah, we're still loading in the world. There we go. Yeah, still loading in the object here because there's supposed to be a campfire there. Yeah, if you've got a lot of lag, stuff is going to load in. I should probably load the objects in on the high priority thread, I guess. But down here, like there's several places where as we walk through the hall, she gets darker. Yep, see, get darker and darker and darker. So yep, the lighting color is working. Yeah, now she's a little orange. Now she's white, yep. So all that's working. So cool. We fixed one bug, one lag bug. If I can get the other ones fixed, may actually build something bigger with the improvement. Oh, good. Yeah, that's why I'm thinking. I mean, after I set the lag simulator up, I was like, how can people? I mean, it was bad enough locally, but yeah, there's no way people could ever have the patience to build anything like this. I definitely would not have the patience to build anything. So that's why I'm thinking if I can get like some of the other remaining issues resolved this weekend, I'll probably cut a release Sunday night and update the server at the same time. So because the protocols have changed a little bit, so I need to upgrade the server when I update the client, and that way everyone can have a fast client and maybe build some cool stuff in the world. Anyway, I think that's all I'm going to do tonight. Give like a couple 30 seconds in case anybody has any questions about what we went over. But lag is well in hand. I've got to finish this to get this popping up quicker. I've got to finish it so that it doesn't take a full round trip to the server just to load the the equipment. So I'd probably cache their object lists or something, which will be interesting. I'm not sure what to do about that, so we'll have to get creative. But even if I don't get that particular thing in, I will do a release just if I can fix the rest of the performance issues, the critical ones. I think there's one more lighting thing I have still unhooked, but nope. But yeah, see how like you can platform now? From here I can jump to the desk. Oops. She's making a liar of me. So you saw this for a second before. She's making a liar of me. But like here, I jumped from there to the desk and like exactly what I was wanting to do. Yeah, so see, I did. It's a weird where the hitbox is for the hitbox for those is kind of weird. I know where it is, that's why I can do it, but inventory. Yeah. So yeah, see there's the hitbox is for weird for this one. Like there is no hitbox here, but you could step up onto the yeah. Anyway, I did it. At least could I get? Oh, the chair's not solid, but I could have done it. Yeah, couldn't quite reach that one. But I bet I could from here. Oh, it's another one of those little half blocks, right? Do you get the trees to fall over? Because I don't have actual wedges. To get the trees to fall over, I made sure these had just a little half block. So if I had cut a wedge out of a whole tree, there would be a half block here, a half block here, and the weight of the tree should get it to fall over in a particular direction. That's why they're shaped that way. Anyway, I haven't seen any questions pop into the chat, so I will go ahead and end the live stream right around here. Thanks for joining, and thanks for the interesting questions about threading. I rarely meet someone who is able to talk about that and point out things that I might have done wrong. So, good catch. And we go and pop up my cool closing card. Thanks for watching. I need to have it freeze on the last frame probably because it's going to fade out here in a second. Anyway, thanks for joining, guys. It's been a blast. Go forth, be productive. If you make something cool, post a screenshot somewhere. If you link me to it, I'll post it. I'll retweet anything that anybody tweets to me, whether it's your game or my game or whatever. And I will see you guys online. Thanks a lot. Thanks, everyone. I'm just typing thanks, everyone, into the chat, and then I'm going to kill it. Stop the stream and ops.